Welcome to the seventh session on naming things and classes. We're familiarised with this. We've seen it before. It's a floor of a block of flats with some furniture and kitchens and fittings and stuff. And we have a whole bunch of classes which we looked at before in lesson 4 on attributes. Where attributes are set by class, we justified the reason behind a number of classes in order to control their attributes in viewports. Particularly, I mean, there's a good example: the metals. Metal cast is cast galvanized metal, metal punch plate. That was a nice one. And yeah, it's got the perforated plate. So if you've got that, in order to control attributes by class, it's a convenient way of doing it, rather than say I just had that sort of punch plate one as fence. Now I do have a class called fence, but if I didn't have the metal class, then I'd have to change the attributes of the fence, and then I'd have different fences and stuff, or screens and things like that. So there's a kind of hierarchy to it. That's one justification. And then the second, of course, is that you can switch things on and off. So let's stick the grid on here. There we are. It's shadowed by an area poly, which I was using in our last session, which is just called site buildings proposed, and that can go off. So now there's the grid. Everything is located in a class, and guess what? Grid stuff begins with a G because it's grid. So I've got grid dimensions. Goodbye. Grid lines. Actually, I'm not using that one these days. I'm using structural grid, which is one that Vectorworks brings in, along with some of these structural lintel, structural slab, structural column. These are Vectorworks default ones, and they're perfectly okay because they're in plain English and they begin with the word and the letter that you're looking for. Generally, I mean, you could argue that a column should begin with the word column. Anyway, I mean, you can see that if you really want to start a new drawing from create a blank document, use a template, start a new one, use a template, and here we go. Here are the built-in Vectorworks stationary documents. I mean, architect metric millimeters. Have a look at that. You open it, and the classes it brings in. Okay, it brings in. Oh, it didn't bring in terribly much, does it? But at least they're in English. British Standard, 1192. There's a history to this. In the old days, computers couldn't take more than 16 or 8 characters in a file name. So the construction industry decided to codify for everything. There were two basic tabular arrangements. One was trades-based, was called the common arrangement. It was actually the way your specification is set up, and it's much more sensible because it starts with concrete and it ends with tiling. CISFB is a slightly more analytic or abstracted version of that. And so the idea was that layers were codified by that system, and so none of the layers are in English. They're not even words. You have to know what the code is. It's like you need a telephone directory to look up what you're trying to draw. And of course, in the old days, there was then another subdivision of 8 of those numbers to do with pen weights. And I've been in rooms with guys and office procedures manuals the size of War and Peace, and of course, nobody followed it. It was absurdly complicated. And then the most extreme aberration from any kind of organisation is where everything is drawn in one class, and then it's impossible to separate. So you do need the classes because they do separate things usefully, but they've got to be in English. and all this uniclass move by these people in Whitehall and bureaucrats and obsessive cryptic crossword geeks who want to codify stuff. It makes it completely, and your architectural practice will lose money because things are not named in plain English. You have international staff, people from Spain, Portugal, wherever, and Germans, and it's hard enough for them to pick up with the English word, let alone have to go and look in a blinking telephone directory to find out what a thing is on a layer. So we must have plain English. I will fall on that sword, and no one will convince me that uniclass has any value at all, or the British Standard 1192 layer naming convention. It's absolute nonsense. It's from an age where filing was done with card indexes, and the whole ethos underpinning the computer interface now is the keyword search. Yes, the name has to be correctly spelt, but Google has proved that all you need is a keyword. So for example, if I've got a drawing that is an electrical overlay, the keyword electrical must appear both in its file name and in the folder in which it is filed. Then I can find it. So it's that simple, really. I mean, okay, my layers here. I do separate my 3D and my 2D stuff. It's a bit of an obsession. But I do find that there are instances where if I'm in a view, I've drawn the 3D object in the same layer as a 2D representation of it, unless it's, of course, if it's a hybrid symbol, but often it's not a hybrid symbol. So that's my justification for that. If I'm working in 3D, I use these classes which begin with the word 3D. Here's an example of this garbage from CISFB. I'm supposed to know that okay, in this case the word is present but after the name, right? I can't find that. Pedestals, right? Because it begins with this absurd code. So let's keep it all in English. Cladding. Cladding means cladding. D actually is a hangover from the old AutoCAD days. It does mean detail layer, as does the suffix LA for landscape. Here we go. And then, these are my conventions. Actually, they're not my conventions. They're from a guy called Malcolm, who used to teach Vectorworks at Manchester University, and I think he still does. Very disciplined guy, extremely knowledgeable. Structural engineering. Okay, that's kind of this is kind of, it was work in progress. There's some legacy names here, and of course there's loads of them because this file is my class carrier. It says it's the classes for BIM. I think I started this in 2015, and this simply carries all the classes. And okay, it's got a bit of a mess. It originally started out nicely ordered like that, I think they are planar objects. No, they're not the screen objects, but the 3D ones are here, so you'll see them in the 3D view. Yeah, you make your own. Let's just see if we do choose the BIM metric, UK metric to residential 2-story with a cellar. Go on then, let's have a look at that. What does Vectorworks bring us in? Oh crikey, it does. It brings us in a lot of this rubbish. But these ones, wall components, are defaults. They go with your wall styles. So this is the BIM coding. I think this is uniclass. I mean, for heaven's sake. And look at the length of the file names, because those are too long. When they get so long and you export it to AutoCAD to a consultant, it won't open it. Because the path length from the folder to the document to the because it translates the class into a layer name, it won't do that. That name is too long. We've had this problem many times actually, where the name of the thing is just too long. So there's another code there. Abbreviate it where you can. and of course things don't go into their attributes, do not work if this is not on. Make all attributes by class. That should always be on, right? Vectorworks brings in a number of default classes. If you put in a doorknob, it's going to be hardware main. There are some other ones, furniture main, they're usually called main. Millwork main is joinery. You can use them or not use them, it's up to you. But at least they're in English, and that's the virtue of it. Oh, it doesn't have, if they're not, they can be in Chinese, but they're not in this encrypted nonsense of numbers. Which anyway, I think you gathered my position on plain English. So that really does classes and naming. And what I was going to show you is that, okay, maybe I have got too many. The thing is, when you start, if you're going to start, you're going to have your own template, and it's probably going to be from the last project. You can't import the classes from, well, you probably can actually, but the way I've done it is to simply, if I want this, if I want all the classes in, I'll reference this file, and it'll bring everything in. And then I've got to start. I mean, it's horses for courses. If it's a massing model, you don't need half of these classes. If it's production information coordinated with engineering, you do. If it's going to be a a rendered model, then yeah, then I'm going to want my cladding, stone, different types of stone, terracotta, and of course they all have a controllable default texture and hatch and stuff and all the rest of it. So if I just want areas, I've got a bunch of areas. I've got area gross internal, blah 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 blah, internal front of house. If I've got a complicated area schedule to do, I think this is where that came from. In gross internal, back of house. So you got a that's void. In those strong rooms, that was this was some project. I think it was a hotel. Security. So you want a breakdown. The developer client wants a breakdown of all the different areas, which is lettable space, which is landlord, and all the rest of it. So that's what that's all about. So you can organise it pretty well, and you want to bring those classes into a new blank document. Just reference them in. Reference them in. It'll bring the classes in, and Bob's your uncle. So that is the virtue of that. Okay, I've got too many. I need to work quickly. I'm going to scroll up and down this long list. So let's purge it. First of all, let's throw out some rubbish. I generally have a layer that I can just chuck rubbish away to or surgical operations where I'm going to work something out and test it and then put it back in the file. And of course, if you can't find stuff, maybe turn on all your layers, turn on all the classes. Something might be hiding if it's not there, if it's not visible. So I'm going to chuck all of this out. With this site 2D? There's nothing there. So let's get rid of those first. I'm going to delete them. Okay, and now we'll purge. So it's a right click. I happen to have it on my right click menu. So I got 567 unused classes, okay, but I'm going to preview them. There may be some that I want to keep, preview items that will be purged, okay. So you just click on type. Now, okay, I've decided this is going to be a 3D model, so I'm going to keep my 3D classes. I don't need the areas and stuff like that, and I don't need detail, but I do want cladding. So it's quite easy to eliminate a bunch of things. So I'm going to keep my finishes, right? We'll just keep those, okay, and then I'm going to purge the rest. Okay, and suddenly that 567 classes is reduced down to a lot less. Still quite a lot, because there's still quite a lot of objects in this drawing, but it makes it a bit more navigable if you're getting fed up with too many classes. And then you can bring them back in by referencing. So there you go, and I'm not going to save that, so that's it. So thanks for watching.